Good day and hello again. Along with the push to get some yard work done, that dinosaur weed, there's quite a bit of it out here by the mill. And that's one of the things I need to get taken care of real quick before I get started on some milling, is get rid of all of that particular weed. While I was out here, I went ahead and just kept working on getting rid of some of the grass so I can actually walk around the mill because, that's kind of an important feature. But in other news, our plans for our barn took forever because the county requires that any building with a sidewall higher than 14 feet has to have an engineer that's licensed in Washington actually approve the plans. So we started looking around, trying to contact the few engineers that we knew. Nobody was willing to redo such a thing. We finally found a guy that is willing. But as we were talking, it started out as an estimate of $1,200 to do that, which, okay, it is what it is. I understand that that's a pretty risky skill set that is out there. And there's a lot of responsibility that goes on in engineers' heads, so I can understand why they don't want to just try and look at somebody else's numbers and change a few things, because there's a lot of risk if they miss something or whatever. Oh, excuse me. But as we were talking with him, what ended up ultimately being decided is that he's going to essentially just start from scratch and design a building that meets the requirements that we have, that's basically designed. So if that's the requirement, then we basically said, okay, well, let's just figure out exactly how we want it and just start from there. So that's what it's evolved into. We are going to be resubmitting those plans soon, as soon as we have to get him, like, he's got to take time, and he's a few weeks out before he can take on that particular project. So we'll have to wait till we get that, and then once we get those plans, we'll be able to resubmit those. In the interim, I'm going to keep working on, while the ground dries out a little bit more, I'll keep working on milling a bit, and we'll get the spare room trailer built up, or buttoned up. I'm still not entirely sure how I'm going to handle the front door. That's ultimately going to change how the front door gets trimmed up, but I can get everything else trimmed up, and I've actually got some windows cut as of Saturday. I got those done, so it was kind of nice. Yesterday we were actually able to relax and lounge in the spare room, and we haven't really been able to do that in 5 years. So that was quite a pleasing thing. Although we discovered also that the windows that I cut, since they're intended to be like, they're going to have cabinets and closets around them, and then have basically a shelf that the cat and the dog can use for a bed. They're kind of low to the ground to the floor in the trailer, and the trailer's not terribly high off the ground. And Charlie discovered that he can jump out the window to fetch balls, which we had some entertaining fun through that. And then he discovered that he can jump in through the window from outside, so that was an interesting discovery. We'll have to record him doing that, and maybe include that in one of the future videos, because it was pretty entertaining. Anyway, what I'm doing at the moment is using the tractor to move some lumber around and get things to a point where I can prep and plan on milling, because I'm one of the things that I'm going to need to be milling a lot of is the ash logs that we have currently, so that I have some siding and flooring that I can work with. I need to mill the cottonwood logs that we have to get decking for the equipment trailer, and for the buddy who has let us use his tractor, and he's let us use his garage and his welder, and he's turned out to be a pretty good friend out here. He's got 2 trailers that need decking also, and since he's given me all of the cottonwood logs that I have, I told him I would definitely get him hooked up. But we've learned that the trailers need a long board. It's like a 2x6 or 2x8 that's 16 or 20 feet long, depending on the trailer. And to get that board stably out of a log requires a big log. So I've got some 24-inch logs, 24-inch diameter logs that are 16 feet long, and that's a beast of a log to move for cottonwood. So those videos will be coming soon, where I will be doing some pretty challenging cutting. The challenge that I'm faced with is I don't really have a way to secure that long of a log in a flat, stable spot. So I'm hesitant to cut those until we're ready to put them on the trailer. Although the truth be told, I guess I could just use the trailer that I have, that I'm working on, or even just use this old broken down trailer frame. I don't know. Anyway, I'll keep working on that. So that's going to be coming. I really got to build some type of cutting device to help clean up all of these offcuts that are piling up over there, because that's getting to be a pretty big pile, and that's a lot of good firewood, if I can stack it and get it dry. So I was rearranging and moving things around to make sure that I have that space, and you saw I brought some boards over and dumped them on the ground here too. What those are is the temporary flooring from when I started building the spare room. They're all roughly 2-inch slabs, 12 to 14, 10 to 14 inches wide, and 8 to 12-ish feet long. So one of the things that I mentioned in the video title is that we need to build a small hay shed, a portable hay shed is my goal. And since I know I'm going to be keeping it dry, because it's going to be just storing hay and allowing me to use the tractor to just move a bunch of hay from the field to the rabbitry, or from the rabbitry to wherever, it's going to have a roof with a pretty good overhang to keep the hay dry. The lumber doesn't necessarily have to be super structural, because it's not really going to hold any major weight. So I'm actually planning on cutting those boards into 3-inch wide, basically 2x3s that I'll use to build that. That's one of the things I'll hopefully be working on tonight after I get off work. Will actually be to go out there and do that. The nice part about it is that they're already cut. The downside is that the reason I'm not using them for anything more important, like trim or battens, which is what they were originally cut to be, was to be for battens, was that I was cutting those at night using some work lights. I was kind of in a rush, I was tired, and I wasn't paying enough attention to the fact that the saw blade was dull. and those boards have some significant wave in them, especially like when you stack them up next to each other. There's a 3/4 inch gap in places where the waves like actually go opposite each other. They're pretty wavy. um, so that it is what it is, though. They will definitely make a good, outdoor structure, where I don't really care if they're perfect. So that'll be a good use for them. I've got actually a pile there, to the camera side of the tractor that is offcuts that are 2-ish inches by 3 or 4 inches for therefor. Those are what I'm planning to build the device for the stacking and cutting of the offcuts. So I'll work on that. I had to go get some water and noticed the kitty coming to investigate what I'm doing. We'll get back to her in a little bit. But this is Kernigan. Very aptly named kitty. I didn't realize she was actually hanging around the tractor so long. That's kind of interesting. So at the moment what I'm doing is just using a handsaw to cut up a bunch of the 1-inch sticker intended boards, so that I can just stack all of this stuff as I go. I will eventually need to spray this with some borax to help treat it and keep it from having issues with bugs. But for now I'm just going to try and stack it to keep it out of the way. And this is the first time I've actually really taken advantage of the fact that I have this palette specifically designed for this purpose. There are a few things I'll be changing about that palette. I want the so if the rails go, if you're looking at the tractor and the rails go from front to back along the length of the forks, then the stiles will go across the forks, and the stiles are actually holding pretty much all of the weight of the boards, and I don't like that top one is only 1 inch thick. So I'm thinking I'm going to redo that with some 2-inch thick boards, and then that way the primary weight on the forks is being held on a thicker board, so I don't have to worry about it. I need to space them a little bit differently. When I built it, my thought was to have them spaced every 2 feet so that when I sticker and stack everything, there's a good support structure. But I've learned that I need to offset those because I want the forks on the tractor to be as wide as possible so that as I'm moving it, it's as stable as possible. And so I need to adjust those just a little bit. I think I can get away with just a couple of inches each direction, and then I've got a little 1 by 1 that's screwed in there just to make sure there's airflow everywhere around the boards, so that it basically starts with this sticker. And I think I can offset that to the edge of the rail. So I think that'll work pretty well. And so again, I'm just using the handsaw to take those long 1 by 1 strips from creating square boards and making those primary cuts. And I'm just making some stickers. That's one of the things that you don't really think about until you start trying to stack and sticker everything, is how many stickers do you actually need. There were some of those that I brought over here and kind of threw off to the side, as they were basically 2 by 2, 2 by 3, and so those are going to be used for the hay shed thing. So here what I'm doing is taking those boards that were intended to be cut down into 1x2 battens, and I'm just stacking them up. And like even on the camera here, you can see the shadows, the waviness to those boards. Um, they're for the most part they're flattish. Like I mean, using them as temporary floor, they were actually quite stable, so they worked for that purpose for several months. Um, but they're very very not flat. Like especially when you start comparing this nice fresh cut. Um, there was a lot there that they needed to have done. So I don't know why I decided this, but I decided to add them all to the pile over here, and then I realized at the end of the day that I needed to stack them on the tractor pallet to move them over to where I'm going to be building. So ultimately, not stacking them as I pull them off the mill, for whatever weird reason, I decided to do that. I create extra work for myself, and I don't recommend that. That's just not a good way to go about it. So I need to shift the mill over a little bit, and that the reason for that is because when I put big logs on it, it tends to shift. Not enough. I haven't had enough of an experience where it's created a problem milling, because the boards underneath there, we took a pretty good amount of time making sure they were flat or as close to level as possible. So I haven't had any problems with that. But every now and again, I just have to shift that over. I do want to eventually cut some larger timber that I can put under there, and I'm probably going to have to do that in the not too distant future because, as I was mentioning earlier, the barn that he's redesigning that, and one of the changes that he's going to make for us is that it'll intentionally have a 3-foot overhang, so that any water, falling off the roof, or any snow will fall several feet away from the building and won't splash up onto the wall. It gives me a lot of leeway in the treatments of the walls and the maintenance down the road, and just keeps things cleaner looking. When I mentioned to him that I liked having a larger overhang than what most buildings have, because a lot of buildings, to save on material, they have a 6-inch or a 1-foot overhang, and that's just not sufficient. And his response was basically that he agreed in the Pacific Northwest having a significantly larger overhang is definitely a preferable thing for structures. So that means that I'm going to end up with a rather long log that I have to work with to get those timbers out of, so that I can mill up to a 27 or so feet. And while I could do something like a ladder trick, something along those lines to try and slide the log up and down, I don't like that idea. So I would personally rather set it up to where I just have the longer log, or the longer mill. And that was the reason we got the extensions to begin with. And as you can see, it's super nice to be able to put 2 logs up here and to just work on those 2 logs, and it saves a bunch of time, because a lot of the time working it is the setup time, and if I can do more steps at the same time and then just be able to run the mill down, it makes things much easier. So here comes the kitty, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm actually going to slow this down into real time now to show you, because she has decided it's now 7 o'clock. It's her treat time. I am not where I'm supposed to be. I'm not in the camper. I'm not sitting on the bed to give her her treats. And so she has to come and find me and tell me that it is now treat time. So here she's just looking at me and just whining and saying, "Hey, pick me up. Give me my treats." So that's where the footage ends for the day, though. The batteries actually lasted as long as I needed today. So we'll end there, but as always, thank you for watching. Stay safe. God bless you and yours.